All right, guys. We got Reig McConnell and Mitch Dolman here. You got multiple powerlifting record holders at the table. All of us are coaches, trainers, whatever label you want to put on it. There's a lot of knowledge sitting at this table. So, our goal today is to, sort of shed some light on some of the things that we might see on social media, might see on, in the gym, in commercial gyms, and what that really means to, the strength athlete, not just what you're seeing. So, welcome, guys.
What's up, man?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you
here.
Glad to have you back.
Yeah.
Glad to have you for the first time.
Yep, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, should be fun. All right, so we all see on. Well, I'm an Instagram. I don't really do Facebook. But so I see on Instagram, whatever social media platforms you guys see, today's powerlifter, and I mean you're talking from the highest level to the beginner. Today's powerlifter is obsessed with squat, bench, and deadlift 3 or 4 times a week. And oh yeah, there's an accessory. I'll do that, just to check the box that I did it. From a programming standpoint, from a training standpoint, from a weak point standpoint, what do you guys think about that style of training? Either one of you, hit it.
I think people get hyper focused on those 3 lifts because those are the 3 that you work for. So they think, oh, I want to get my squat up, so I need to squat more. Oh, I need to bench. My bench needs to go up, so I'm going to bench more. I think for some people, it may work. In my experience, that kind of beats you up. It's hard to maintain that for a long time. Strength sports are a longevity sport. You're probably going to be able to do it for a long time if you do it right. But I think if you go in there and you hammer, squat, bench, and dead every single day, you're going to get some use injuries. You're going to hit some plateaus. You'll peak, then you'll hit a plateau, and you'll kind of be there for a while. So if it's just like straight bar, squat, bench, dead, I think 3 or 4 times is probably too much for the average.
Now, Mitch, and the people that you worked with and you've seen, what do you think about plateaus with constantly doing the main 3 lifts?
I mean, plateaus are the most frustrating thing on the planet, like especially in powerlifting when it's all objective in the sense of I need to lift more weight to be more successful. And so seeing people plateau with doing these amounts of things is they feel like, where do I go from here? And I think that's the big question they ask themselves, because a lot of people on social media, which does have some truth to it, is repetition is a good thing. So you want to do more than once a week, but the area where the return is worth the risk kind of diminishes after, I would say, twice, maybe 3 times a week, depending on intensity levels. And so they're doing the big main lifts 3 or 4 times a week, and then they stop seeing return. They're going to feel in themselves mentally, where am I supposed to go from here? Because I can't do more. But then I don't want to do less, because if I do less, I'm going to lose that progress. And so when you go full bore at doing the big lifts so frequently, you feel like you have nowhere to go after that. And especially with people who aren't experts, who aren't doing these things or seeing different people and how they respond and react, they're going to think that they have to either try and do more or somehow stay with what they're doing and push through plateaus, even though their body isn't going to let them do that.
So do you think that, because I mean, so if we break down a squat, bench, and deadlift, you can break it down in your head in 3 seconds. You know that simply doing those lifts, each of those exercises would create an imbalance, right? Because there's no complete exercise, right? So if we're trying to train a bench press and all we do is bench press, well, we're creating, a strength profile imbalance. And do you think that imbalance then, propels those plateaus into lasting longer?
Absolutely, because when you do stuff like that, you're going to start building habits in those areas. For me, like for myself, for example, I've had extremely strong triceps, and not until recently did I realize that has caused plateaus for me, because I had weak shoulders and weak chest, and I didn't train them enough. So when I got to a point where my bench press was relying almost solely on triceps, I had to basically break everything down and move backwards before I could move forwards. But that's coming from someone who knows to do that. Again, going back to what I said previously, if you're not someone who's going to be able to take that backstep approach and sort of look at things from the outside, you're not going to know to sort of move backwards before you can move forwards. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Sorry, just to touch on that, I think another thing is the mindset. So if you bench every day, your bench is going to go up. When you're starting, your bench is going to go up. You're like,
Sure.
awesome. That one day a week where you squat, it's going to suck. And then you're not going to want to squat. Then maybe you deadlift once a week. You're benching 3 times a week. You're going to want to stick with that. And your bench may go up eventually, but then you plateau and you build this kind of mental barrier between you and lower body work, squats, because you don't want to squat. If you want to be a competitive powerlifter, if you want to be balanced in your lifting, you have to have a strong lower body too, and that's going to help out with your bench. But people will avoid it because people have a tendency to just gravitate towards what they enjoy, what's fun, and what they're successful in, and it kind of leads to that.
yeah, I mean, I've been under a bar my whole life, and I have what I feel like is one of the biggest imbalances in our facility because I love to squat. So my squat is, so far out of proportion with my other lifts. And even though I try and look at it objectively, my programming, I try and look at it objectively. It's even the intensity level, that you touched on. It's even the intensity level that changes when you get to that favorite movement or favorite lift. So then from a programming standpoint, let's say you don't have one of the 3 of us telling you what to do and you're the regular everyday athlete. How do you avoid stuff like that? Because I just wanted to squat my whole life, and now it's a mess, and I'll never catch up with the other 2. So how do you avoid something like that? How do you not allow that to happen? And then after, how do you fix it?
Good question, man.
I think not allowing it to happen is you're going to have to just have a conversation with yourself about what do you want out of the lifting. If you're trying to lift to be, a specialist in one movement or the other, then that's one thing. But if you're trying to be an overall power lifter and be successful in that, you have to tell yourself that and realize that there are things that you can do with each major lift to make sure that they're moving forward. Because there are a lot of people that you talk to as well, that going to the point of favoritism for exercises is if you put more focus towards squat or deadlift specifically, the other will suffer because you'll never have the capacity to do the other one to the maximum effort that you need to be able to do to move forward. And so you have to ask yourself, do I want to be good at all 3 or do I want to be good at one? Like, what is my focus before you can really sort of determine the best way forward? And I think to avoid those types of mistakes, it's kind of making sure you ask yourself that at the beginning.
I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where unless you start out with a coach and you have a set of eyes on you or you're on a team and somebody's writing your programming for you, you're going to run into that issue. Because something's going to go well and that number's going to jump and other things are going to lag behind. Like I get that.
Yeah.
So, we all do,
Yeah, but so adjusting it is one of my lifters, she says it all the time. She's like, well, this sucks the most, so I know I probably need to do it.
It's a fantastic attitude.
And that's how it is. It's whatever you are the worst at, you got to hammer that out. And it's hard because it takes a special kind of person to go in the gym and be like, I'm going to do the thing that I'm worst at, that is the most painful, that is my least favorite. And I'm going to just hit that every single time until it catches up with whatever is up. It may never catch up completely, but at least you can kind of level out.
Well, and I think if you're serious about powerlifting as a sport, not just a hobby, come in here and powerlift. If you look at it as a sport, I think it's your job to create that complete strength profile where, I have a huge imbalance, in my lifts. You have a huge difference between your hip lifts, a 600-pound deadlift and a 500-pound squat, so then we have to start looking at it as a sport. Like you said, if I'm terrible at it, this is what I need to do. Whichever one of your clients said that is, sharp. But I think all of us, no matter the experience level, no matter the strength level, this has to be the way to go. What am I bad at? Which is essentially what are my weak points? And they're not fun to train. I hate training. Cool. I hate it. I hate training. Hate it. I program it for all of us every day, and I hate it. Me too. It's like it's I get to the end of the workout, I'm like, do I have time I gotta go for the dogs. You know, I hate it.
Yeah.
But it's my weak point, you know, and obviously, you know, those other numbers are never going to move unless I train core.
Yeah.
So circling back to the original question, I feel like it's an issue because for these powerlifters to constantly show squat, bench, and deadlift as their main, you know, their main focus, because so many people follow them and they are influencers in the strength world. So many people follow them, and then, oh, this is the way I have to do it, and then we just perpetuate the cycle of, you know, oh, this is the way we're train, this is the way we're train. So when we come back to like full circle programming, let's touch on the variations part, right? So yes, we have to train those main three lifts. That's our sport. But touch on the variations part. Like, should we always do the same bench press? Should we always do a competitive bench press? Should it always be with calibrated plates? Should it always be on a combo rack? And should it always be with, you know, whatever 20 kilo bar you're going to use in that particular federation? Should it always be like that? Or should there be variations? What do you think?
I think there should always be variation, because in those variations, we're training different parts of the movement and muscle groups to maximum effort, which we need to do. For instance, if you do a flat bench, you're going to be hitting more of your chest and like your shoulders, but when you do a Cadillac bar or a football bar bench press, you're going to be putting that maximum load on your tricep. So it changes the maximum load and where it's located on your body in terms of the muscles that are moving the weight. So same with like squat, when the weight is lower on, or a higher or lower on like a safety squat bar, it changes where the maximum load is going to be building a different part of the movement. But with saying that, you still need to practice three main movements in those movement patterns, which is why doing the style of programming we do, where we're always incorporating speed work, which is always competition stance box squat or a regular squat or deadlifts, to make sure we're still practicing that movement in a specific way. It's finding that good mix, but I do think variations have an important role in things, because if you do just flat dumbbell or flat barbell bench press, you're going to create imbalances again, because if you're someone like me who utilize triceps more than anything else, then certain parts of the body aren't going to get loaded enough or efficiently, and so it's a good way to mix in different the muscle groups, like use them more adequately throughout using variations.
So then, variations from a training standpoint, Reig, when you look at an athlete from a weak point, you know, from a weak point view, how do variations come into play in the way you program? Because, you know, variations can be a lot bigger than most people think. You could take, you know, a box squat and create 17 variations out of it in 5 minutes. But there seems to be a very narrow way of thinking about it. So when you look at an athlete and their strength profile and their weaknesses, you know, how do you determine variations?
It's funny you bring that up. I just taught a box squat to two different people 2 different ways last week. I introduced it into the program, and they're both doing it very differently for different reasons. One of them, we just want them to feel supported and really work on the quads a bit more. So it's more of an upright torso touch and go. And the other is more of the west side, wide stance, box, hamstring, glute engagement to come on up out of there to build up the post chain. So it all depends on what we're looking at. There are different ways to do everything. You can use the bar, you can use the band. There's so many different ways to attack all these movements. I think what I look at is, okay, so I kind of break it down. I think, okay, what are we missing here? What's the weak point? What's causing the weak point? And how do we address that? So you kind of start at the highest level, and then you kind of go down from there, get really, really granular. And you look, okay, well, it's their press, their bench press. Okay, well, what's weak? Is it their chest? Is it their triceps? Is it their shoulder rotation? Is it their lats? Or can they not create the right rack to create stability? Are they not using enough leg drive? Getting down to as granular as the athlete needs to go to really build them from the ground up or the base up, and build a good foundation, I think is extremely important. You're trying to figure out what variation of a movement you should use.
No, it's a cool thing that you were just talking about, because essentially you're breaking down the difference between sports specific and general fitness, right? And in a sports specific, in our particular sport, we're exactly talking about squat, bench, and deadlift with a straight bar and this is what it is. But general fitness plays a bigger role in programming than sport specific fitness. And I think this goes along for every single sport. So, you're talking about using variations to work all of the things that the main lift doesn't work. You're talking about creating, movements and variations based on specific weak points. All of these things are simply general fitness. So you can go back to one of the things, the late great Louis Simmons said, decades ago, is that, well, if we build up the foundation, like you said, we build up this general fitness level, then the sport specific stuff just immediately follows and becomes stronger. The example always was, well, the first time you ever walked into a gym and deadlifted, how much could you deadlift? Oh, I could deadlift 200 pounds. Okay, how'd you do that? You didn't specifically train for deadlift. You've never done it before. So how did you do it? Well, you did it because of all of that base of fitness you developed through your life, through sports or everyday activities or chores. It doesn't matter. You built up this general, fitness level of strength, this overall body level of strength that allowed you to do that. Well, if you start to look at that as the concept of strength and then use sport specific as tweaks, as rehearsing your form, getting the movement patterns automatic, well, now we're able to build this superior strength athlete because we're not limited by the imbalances created in just doing a squat, bench, and deadlift all the time.
But that's why, going back to your point of the accessories, why accessories are so important is they are responsible for building the foundation for everything. And so I think athletes who just focus on the main lifts and don't do accessories are doing themselves such a disservice to the foundational strength in everything, because without, doing barbell rows or lat pull downs, your bench will never get to where it needs to get to if you want to be successful with it. Without doing, reverse hypers or lower back extensions, your deadlift and squat are going to suffer because you need lower back strength. And while the big lifts build that, they don't build it in isolation. And so doing things that build the foundation to actually move weight the way you want it to move, it's a requirement to be successful. A lot of people in a place like this don't care as much about competing. They care more about the general health of things. And so when we're working with them, programming with them, they aren't necessarily going to be focused on how much can I squat, bench, or deadlift. They're focused on, like, when I go out in the world, I don't want to get hurt. Most people in here have kids, or they're in the military, or something along those lines. So when you're building that foundational strength or general health and wellness, you need the foundational core strength or back strength, or, if you are picking up a bag of sand to put on your yard, or you're going to be doing things like that, picking up your kid, you want to avoid injury. And those are when the main injuries happen. People will say, I got hurt lifting at the gym. They say I got hurt because my kid ran too fast and I tried to turn and grab them when they were running. And so when we're building both powerlifting, sport, and general wellness, the accessory movements are the ones creating that protection from real life events that we are actually building that strength.
And how do you teach the intensity in accessories? Because you can have, your social media squat, bench, and deadlifters, and they'll say, oh no, I do accessories, but the accessories are maybe 50% intensity compared to those main lifts. So how do you teach somebody to take these things, like me doing abs, how do you teach somebody to take these things more serious? I mean, do you have conversations like this, and show them the video? Do you go one-on-one with them? Because I know we have a half a dozen athletes who will still, poo-poo a sled pull and a reverse hyper, even though, the evidence is, far and beyond that it improves all of your lifts, but, they still won't do it. So, as coaches, how do you convince somebody to do that?
I think you got to show them. Like, I program for people. I see people in person, and it always comes down to, what's the pain point? What's it going to take for you to understand how important this is? Is it going to take you missing a squat that you should have had because your core broke down? It's something that you had hit before, but you were exhausted because you cut weight for a meet. You're on the platform, and it was something you should have had.
Stop talking about me, Reig.
There'd be a lot of people at this table. I just don't think about right now. But saying like it's either you got to create the buy-in, and it's hard to get buy-in. And everyone's a little bit different, so it depends on who it is. But I've had to do both. Where somebody's like, "Are you doing your accessories?" Yeah, I did some of them. What's some of them? This one, this one, and I'm like, why didn't you record? It's the same thing. And then I have others who are like, yeah, I did every single one. I took them to failure. I did as much as I could. It's like, awesome. It's how far do you want to go? How bad do you want it to show up and do the things that suck the most, that you hate, that seem annoying, that are going to put you over the edge? I think that's the difference between a competitor and Gen Pop.
And I think it's sexier to see the big lifts and do them heavy, and it's more fun. And circling back to social media, this is kind of all you see. So I really feel like from my standpoint that social media does a huge disservice to up and coming athletes, to even experienced athletes who get influenced by watching. Oh man, that's a 1,000-pound deadlift, and all they do is squat, bench, and deadlift. What am I doing wrong? Even though they've been in the gym for decades, I think social media does a huge disservice to that. I mean, what do you think?
Man, you can probably rewind this, like see me get red. As soon as you start talking about it, I think social media is great. I think it's awesome, but I hate it so much because there's so much trash out there. There's some really great resources. There's some really great coaches and instructors, people who do this, who put out great content. But the problem is who's absorbing that content. One, like you said, nobody wants to see me do banded triceps. That's not cool. Nobody wants to see it. They want to see a big deadlift. Nobody wants to see me make faces as I try to do glute and hammer. Nobody wants to see that stuff. They want to see a huge squat. They want to see a big bench. They want to see the sexy exercises. And the other thing is there are so many people out there who have created absolutes where if you're not doing this, you're wrong. Or if you don't do it like this, you're wrong. Or this is the only way you should be doing it. The three of us all move very differently. We can all move some pretty decent weight, but we all do it we do it different. Yeah. Bodies are different. Our strengths are different. The way that we approach it is very different. The way that we have to execute is going to be different. Anyone that speaks in an absolute, I get upset with because
I never trust.
Yeah, exactly. This is not the only way. No. This is not it. You don't have to do this. And then the other thing is what's the saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. That's true. We stood around here at that squat rack and talked about an 18-year-old squatting, what was it, like 700 pounds or something like that in Louisiana. I can't compare myself to that kid. But if I'm 18 years old and I don't know any better and I'm seeing that happen to no fault of his own because he's just out there moving heavy weight. Yeah. But the internet has built it up. It's like now I'm like, oh, well, I can't do that. Am I doing this wrong? Do I just need to squat heavy all the time? I'm going to go in the gym and squat heavy all the time until eventually hurt myself or I just can't go.
Yeah. Now, do you think that no, I'm not talking about that kid in specific, but, a lot on social media, you'll see these massive lifts. And, some of these are tested federations. You see these massive lifts. And then you see on social media their physiques changing rapidly. Some people are truly built different. They're born with thicker connective tissue and better genetics. And, all of this is true. But the body can only adapt and grow so fast. No matter your genetics, you're not changing science. So I feel like your social media does a disservice to your regular athletes because the regular athletes don't know, the performance enhancing drugs that your social media influencers are taking. Like, oh no, I'm drug free. I'm in a drug free federation. You can test me whenever you want. And I'm going to go squat 900 pounds and I only weigh 160.
And I got 10% body fat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could go compete in a bodybuilding show in 2 weeks too. Yeah. I think this does a huge disservice because it's so disheartening to look at as an athlete. Like, oh my God, I'm obviously not built for this sport because I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to break a 300-pound bench press, and these guys are in there at, less than 200 pounds, benching 550 on a pause. Yeah, claiming I'm drug free. So from that influencer standpoint, I mean, there are studies out there to say, percentage of people, but how much do you think that is performance enhancing drugs, and how much do you think there are that many elite athletes out there?
I think social media, going back to that a little bit, has sort of caused like a misconception in how many like elite athletes there really are, especially in this sport, because the only people you see on social media are the only elite athletes in the sport. Whereas, other professional sports, you see them on TV, there's big teams, 40 guys, 50 guys on a team. When it comes to powerlifting, you have your handful of guys that you see constantly, and they're the top 0.0001% of the sport. And some of them, and all of them are genetically gifted. All the ones who have the capabilities to be that large and to do what they do, they are genetically gifted. But when it comes to the performance enhancing drug side of things, it's a lot of the how much can they really be doing in a natural sense to be increasing and getting better so frequently? And why is there, we don't hear a lot about injuries with some of these guys. We don't hear a lot about, I need to take some time off. I need to take some steps back. It's like we're talking, we go to the Worlds, and then 2 weeks later, we're back on a program where we're squatting, max effort every week or whatever it is. And yes, again, like you said, genetics play a huge role in that, but it gets to a point where, like, how can we trust you to say that when what you are doing doesn't seem possible for anybody on earth without something? Yeah. And I think that does a disservice to people, because going back to our original question of squat, bench, and deadlift 4 days a week, if you're on performance enhancing drugs, you can do squat, bench, and deadlift 3 or 4 days a week with maximum effort and be totally fine. And you're going to see results with that kind of stuff. So it's that. And then on top of it, with social media, like, you see these guys post a video of them squat, bench, and deadlifting every single day, but they might not be doing that every single day. They're just filming certain days and posting every single day. And so that also creates that weird misconception of, I'm bench squatting and deadlifting every single day. Here's a 550 bench, 750 squat, and 900-pound deadlift 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to sit back and be like, there's no way they're doing it 3 days in a row. They're like, holy crap, this guy just did it 3 days in a row. I can't get there. Like, this is crazy. This guy's a machine. And so it gives like a multi-layered like facade of how things are going, and like the potential for people to actually get close to being successful in this type of sport.
Yeah. I used to coach CrossFit, and one thing that I would see all the time was people would come in, and years ago, people would come in and say, "Oh, well, I want to look like that. I want to move like that. I should be able to lift that much." Well, I saw Matt Fraser do this, or I saw Froning do that, or I saw Toomey do this. Those are professional athletes. If that was
professional
one
athletes.
of the beauty of what CrossFit did was they made it say like, "Oh, everyone can go into a box. Everyone can do these workouts." Yeah, that's true, but these are professional athletes. Don't compare yourself to a professional athlete. I play social sports football. I don't think I could go out there on Sunday and run a kickback for a touchdown. It's not going to happen. I don't compare myself to a professional athlete, but I think it's the same thing with social media, CrossFit, powerlifting, bodybuilding, these things. People look at these regular or these elite athletes, these professional athletes, and think that that's what they should be doing. And in reality, it's that's that person's entire life. That's their job. They train 4 hours a day. They spend a ton of money on recovery. Their diet is on point all the time. They have professional coaches. They're not working a 9 to 5 and then going to the gym tired after skipping lunch because they had a meeting come up. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's reality.
And just going to the, we're not throwing shade at these people. Like, the people who are the best work incredibly hard. Sure. They are freaks of nature. They do what they do, and it's not like they're taking the easy way out. Performance enhancing drugs are putting them in the top echelon of the world. They still work harder than everybody, but that goes to what Reig just said, is because they can. And they have that financial incentive to do performance enhancing drugs, because the only people in our sport specifically that are going to make any money off the sport are the ones who are at your big federation world championships, who are winning gold medals, who are on the stage where it's actually being broadcasted on TV or on the internet. Those are the only ones. And so if you're within striking distance of that, you're going to do what it takes to get there. Not to mention certain federations, when it comes to their drug testing, like most sports, like the other day when Saquon Barkley did the reverse hurdle over a guy, he was drug tested the next day because they're like, no way.
Yeah.
But we're talking with powerlifting, you get drug tested if you win, or if you're randomized, or it's like the day of the meet or the day before the meet. So, and people who are the best in the world at strength sports have people around them or are knowledgeable enough themselves on how to ingest these things, take these things into their system and get them out before they're going to test positive on a drug test. And so it's just kind of like a multi-layered issue that, again, these guys are working super hard, but they have the incentive to do it because they want to win. They want to make some money off of this. If they're putting their life toward it, potentially the longevity of their health, they're going to want to make it worth it. And so I can, like, again, see why social media in that sense sort of plays a negative role.
Yeah, so maybe there needs to be a different way to look at it differently. With these are professional athletes, as you said. Professional athletes. The definition of I do this for a living. I do this to make money. Don't categorize yourself with a professional athlete,
right?
Because there are so many factors, like you said, that can go into how do I perform at this level. And I'm not taking anything away from their work ethic or genetics or, they're far above mine or anybody that I know. But there are certain things that are possible and certain things that are not possible with the human body. And that kind of goes a little bit, circling way back to something both of you said was, I hate the sort of the ultimatum, like you do it this way or it's not going to work. There's one way to do things. You hear that a lot with coaches that talk about, and I'm talking very successful strength athletes that have now turned into coaches. Well, this is the way to do it. This is the only way to do it. Well, it's the only way to do it because that's the way you did it. You never read any more books since you got your 48-hour certification online somewhere. And so to you, this is the only way to do it because this is what works for you. But you need to look at this sort of hybrid style of training and open your mind to what is required to adapt. Adaptations are only happen because of variation. You constantly do the same thing all the time, you're going to plateau, like we talked about originally. So these variations are key to going through adaptations and getting you stronger and stronger and stronger. And if you don't vary all the time, you're going to plateau more often than not. And it amazes me to listen to these coaches talk about, oh no, you have to stay with the same set of exercises for 6 months, or like, have you read anything that was published after 1965? Anything at all? That drives me nuts. So kind of close it out a little bit. I don't really love the table talks that turn into a 3-hour session. So to kind of close it out a little bit, each of you in turn, doesn't matter who goes first. What is the most important part of a strength program, strength training, a strength athlete? What is the key factor that's going to allow for personal success? I'm not talking about a world championship, but personal success in the sport of strength. What do you think is the most important part?
I think it's consistency. I think it's staying consistent for a long, long time, doing the same thing over and over again. And you said you don't have to do the same 6 exercises over and over and over again. But if you find stuff that works for you, continue to do it. And as someone who has programmed for many people will jump on a program and it won't work in the first 2 weeks. Well, I haven't hit a PR in 2 weeks. Oh, me neither, man.
Yeah.
Okay. But just staying consistent with the plan, day after day, week after week, turns into years eventually. And if you show up with the right intensity, just stay consistent. I think that's so important because people will take time off, they'll take a week off, a month off, 6 months off, and right back. Then they could jump right back into where it was before. But that's not all.
I think beyond like consistency is probably the best answer to give for that because motivation dies. And if you always rely on motivation, you'll never stay consistent. So being consistent, if I were to say something beyond being consistent, I would just say, like, be open-minded and always be willing to learn. Because one of the reasons you have conversations like this is you both have knowledge I don't have. I might have some knowledge you guys don't have. And we've all done this for a good amount of time to know, a good amount of stuff. So if you're someone who's in general fitness, you're not an expert, be open-minded. Don't listen to the people who say there's one way or the highway kind of thing. Always, think, I like this, I enjoy this, but what else can I learn? What else can I know to improve this or improve that? Like, people ask me for questions. I actually had a friend today ask me about like scapular exercises because I've got a really tight upper back, and I sent him videos of people that I follow because I learned from them because they're some of those influencers that create really good content. So it's an idea of just never stop wanting to learn if being healthy for the rest of your life is important, which it should be. So I think that, and with consistency, would be my two top.
Yeah, I agree with with consistency and essentially discipline, right, over motivation. And I think if you had a triangle of important aspects, one thing that I would say that has to be constantly in your mind is that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like you said in the example of, I've been on my program for 2 weeks and I haven't PR'd. This is, the strength of sport is about longevity. And it's about, constantly trying to improve, constantly trying to learn and adapt through new ways of doing things, through new ways of programming and learning from the people around you, keeping an open mind, because you can learn something from somebody who's been in fitness for a month. Now, it doesn't matter how long you've been in it. You can learn something from that person. Even if it's learning from, the social media gurus who don't know what they're talking about at all, you can learn the way not to do something. There's always, keeping that open mind about something, but realizing that it's a marathon and not a sprint. Like, take your time, enjoy the process, enjoy the fact that some days you're going to be weaker, some days you're going to be stronger. That is all part of this, exciting process of getting stronger. I love those three. So thanks, guys. Thanks so much for sitting at the table, talking about fitness, talking about training. We'll definitely do it again.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
Fun.
All right.